Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And when it comes to news, well, CCP just released an article about stuff that has been deployed on CC, some more changes that are coming, some rebalancing stuff regarding the Black Ops battleships. Then there's also going to be changes to some of the exploration frigates. I think that's pretty interesting. Extra high slot for the Helios so that they can use the interdiction nullifier. All looks to be in the right direction, but then coming as a surprise to me, the Vorton projector is getting a massive buff when it will be able to hit 10 targets rather than 5 targets in a single shot. So that could be huge. I've actually been slowly training up my skills for the battleship as well, the Edencom battleship. So perhaps that's going to become a project for later down the line. I mean, you could do some serious damage even in PvE if you can take shots at 10 targets in a single shot. So that could be very interesting. Next up, we'll take a quick look at the new Eden store. Let's see what's happening over here. So we get some bundles front and center. Still the ultra violence vortex skins marked as new, and we're not spotting anything too special. On the services front, no sales or anything like that. So we get to move on to the market nice and quickly. As always, we'll start with plex and stuff, and that's coming in at 140. Like that. All right, let's go to the plex chart to start with, and this does start to look like a trend reversal. The average prices have gone up from 2.4 million to 2.5 million, so a very nice increase in price here. And this is sort of what I was talking about, that hesitation that was constantly existing in the market, where 2.4 million was very difficult for the market to break. That has finally happened, and so in a single push we find ourselves at a 2.5 million average price for plex now. When we look at the actual numbers in GTF 4, it's 2.6, getting towards 2.7 million ISK very quickly, and buyers forced up towards that 2.5 million mark. In the player owned trade hubs, we go just below 2.6 million, so hardly a move there on the cheapest sell order, and then the buyers are in the same ballpark, just below 2.5 million. So about a 1 million move up in plex in about a week. Very interesting to see that this all of a sudden happened. Now, the real question is going to be, will we be at another weighting pattern here, or is this going to be the start of a trend that really pushes up from the bottom towards, well, who knows how high plex could go. But this does start to feel like a serious turnaround. Next up, we have the multiple pilot train certificates that should see something similar, and well, today's and yesterday's averages at least are above 1.25 billion ISK. We're talking 1.26 billion for a couple, well, actually 10 of them still in the perimeter Tranquility Trading Tower, and then sellers go up above 1.3 billion ISK, with buyers still just below 1.2 billion. So these buyers are not having too good a time, I think, at the moment, trying to pick up some of these training certificates. Those prices are going up as well, but we don't see that clear trend break, that clear high point in the last 3 months or so on the training certificates just yet. Then we've got the skill extractors that should follow suit, following plex very closely. In fact, today's price is almost getting to 300 million ISK. We're talking 294 million for the sellers in the Trading Tower, and then 305 million for the sellers in GTF 4 itself. Buyer forced up to 287. So this is definitely something that we don't see too often. We've got a very big increase in price, a real trend break happening in the skill extractors, and the buyers are very aggressively closing that gap. To see such a jump in price and to still only see about a 5 to 6 million ISK margin between sellers and buyers is pretty rare. You usually have like a little bit of a margin opening up, with the buyers lagging behind a little bit here. Very, very aggressive move up in these skill extractors. Let's take a look at the impact on these skill injectors then. Here are the large skill injectors, and this is not what I would have expected, but that could become very interesting if you're looking for an investment opportunity, because these are still going down and we're still talking about a 1-year low point yet again for the large scale injectors, selling now for 580 million ISK and buyers at 545 below the 550 mark for large scale injectors. Now this right, plex and extractors are basically a part of these scale injectors, and so we should start to see at some point an impact of their trend shift. So very weird to still see that massive pressure. This is basically the worst chart for any investor, of course, going down from 730 million ISK down to 570 on the chart in pretty much a straight line. But will things change at some point? Who knows? It will of course also depend a little bit on the generosity that CCP will have with the skill points themselves. Small scale injectors, all right, definitely interesting. Smaller item, basically something that probably responds a little bit more quickly, and you can see here at the tail end that we have that end to the downtrend on the last couple of days. So this is interesting as well. 118 million for the sellers, 111 for the buyers. So we went through the 120 mark, but I don't think we'll be staying there for too long. At least that's what logic would tell me, considering the skill extractor prices at the moment. And yeah, that does mean that, in my opinion, these large scale injectors that are still pushing down, it's like your final chance, if you think this is the bottom, to still try and grab them, let's say below 550 million. I don't think it'll last very long anymore. The small scale injectors are already showing signs of trying to form a bottom here. And then we've got the daily alpha injectors that managed to make their way back to 42.5 and are currently between 40 and that price. We're talking 42.8 for the sellers, 37 million for the buyers, basically right on its average, and definitely not something that you can use as a gauge for what's happening with maybe Plex or the other skill injectors. These daily alpha injectors are definitely different from everything else, and if I'm not mistaken, CCP has or is planning to reduce this or to remove this limitation here. I saw it mentioned somewhere. The injectors may only be used by characters in the alpha clone state. That'll remain, and only one daily alpha injector may be used per day. I thought that there was talk about removing that limitation, which I'm not sure if that's actually a good choice. I honestly think that as they are now, this is something that keeps the alpha player base nicely engaged. It's a goal that they can set themselves, 40 million. Earn a daily alpha injector, and then try to you can either have a very good day where you make 40 million and you get your daily alpha injector, or you can also have some bad days where you don't earn 40 million, but you can make up for that with some extra effort beforehand. And so this will allow you to basically have like a dozen daily alpha injectors over the course of a couple of weeks, and then if you have a bad day, you can still use your daily alpha injectors. I honestly think that removing that limitation may not be the best choice, as this the limitation basically allows you to get ahead of the game a little bit, to invest in EVE Online, earn a couple of extra daily alpha injectors, and then sit back a little bit, or be unlucky, have a little bit of margin for a couple of unlucky days if you get ganked or something like that. So yeah, not sure how I feel about that one. I would basically leave it as a goal that has a very specific rhythm as well. And after that, we still have the hypercores to take a look at. Slowly, well, this I wouldn't say slowly moving up, although it's probably that, right? 5-day moving average still moving up a little bit, finally dragging 20-day moving average up a little bit as well. So in the last week, I'd say slight upwards pressure, but it is basically a sideways movement. 263,000 for the sellers, 243 for the buyers. But yeah, that Plex move could be the start of a real turnaround in this section in general. Next up, we've got the minerals. They are coming in at 925. As always, we will start with titanium, and you may already have seen from the ticker that we have started to move sideways a little bit in the current range between 4 and 5 ISK, which is not entirely unexpected unexpected considering the industry changes that have reduced the amount of titanium needed. So at the moment we are talking, let's take a look at the GDAP prices, 490 for the sellers, 438 for the buyers. That's still a pretty decent margin. And then supply wise, of course, 600 million, 200 million. There's definitely still plenty of supply of titanium around. Well, it is just a high-sec mineral, and so that activity, it tends to generally be pretty robust. So yeah, we're oversupplying if you're looking for that 5-6 ISK average price, but that's normal considering the lower requirements. But the other minerals, that's where things could be more interesting. Pyrite is continuing to see a little bit of pressure, but is also slowing down its descent. Don't think we'll break 15 ISK, 17 for the sellers and 1620 for the buyers. Still some serious volumes here with 500 million units, 100 million, 50 million units. So high-sec mining does seem to be going quite well. Eventually, I do think that this will also basically settle with lower activity, right? If prices for minerals go too low, then some players are going to switch to other activities in order to try and earn a living in EVE Online, and as a result that should then have a little bit of an upwards pressure as well. This is really the market activity, the market doing its price setting, and that happens all the time. And at the moment, right, your mining, high-sec mining especially, is under pressure. Then we've got the Mexalon chart that is also stopping its descent, so we are trying to find these new price ranges. Unfortunately for the high-sec miners, 1 year low point and below 75 ISK, 67 for the sellers and 61 for the buyers. Now, does this mean that it's time to panic? No. Historically speaking, 75 ISK for Mexalon was a normal, reasonable price, a little bit below that after the major April rush into industry, where everything that wasn't bolted was just used in order to produce a lot of stuff. We could definitely also still be in a low demand situation, although I think now we'll be in that low demand situation. You've got summertime coming, you've got the war that seems to be winding down a little bit. Activity could be going down generally speaking, and so we could be stuck in this low demand situation for quite a little bit, which again is not good news for the high-sec miners, because you're getting less for your trit, less for your pyrite, and a lot less for your Mexalon that has really been very, very much your focus over the last year or so, because you got prices of 100, 125, 150, and even a rush in April up to 200 ISK for your Mexalon. Those were crazy returns for your time spent mining in high-sec. If you could spot some Mexalon, this is of course now something that only the more hardcore or the players that really enjoy high-sec mining will still be continuing with that activity, because it's a lot less effective. I think that missions and things like that, and exploration especially, will probably become quite competitive at this point. Then we've got the other side, which may also draw a little bit of that high-sec mining, which is actually something that I've been thinking of as well, is try to move into low-sec, right? Risk a small, cheap ship, but try to grab some Isogen and some Noxium. And look at this here, counter to the trend for the high-sec minerals, Isogen actually going up in price above 50 ISK, which it hasn't been able to do in the last month or so. We're talking 53 for the sellers, 52.30 for the buyers. Now, this is a little bit bad news. We still have 500 million units here also that's in the weight at almost 54 ISK, but it again I think shows my theory that if those players that hold those Isogen stocks that are still out there are now slowly unwinding those stocks, and that it is being absorbed by the market, we are starting to see the upwards potential for Isogen, because, well, the current supply compared to the current demand for Isogen is probably not in line with a 50 ISK price. And then we've got the Noxium chart that is continuing to go down a little bit, but coming from a rather ridiculous 2000 ISK a piece. We're still just below 1500 ISK. We're talking 1400 now for the sellers, 1286 for the buyers, and this is still an incredible price for Noxium. Even historically speaking, this is very, very high. And so yeah, this could be something for high-sec miners to ponder if you're not still flying under a war deck. Although even flying under a war deck, I don't think they'll hunt or expect you to be in low sec. So maybe this is something that I might look into myself as well. Depends on what I want to do, but like get a venture, right? Make sure it can get out of there, try to get into low sec, try to find that noxium, try to find that isogen. Potentially that could become something to do for miners that, you know, entices them into a more risky situation. But now you experience a little bit more of EVE Online. Although you also always have, of course, which is something that I do, you know, am I going to risk a ship, spend time in a less effective ship, go out into low sec, fly somewhere, you know, take all of those risks or do I just jump in my Orca and mine as efficiently as I know I can for the high-sec minerals in relative safety? It's always a difficult thing to do, but as prices for high-sec minerals continue to go down, I do think part of the miner player base will start to make that switch and look into what they're willing to risk for the higher returns of the low-sec minerals. Then we've got our null-sec minerals, which I think are in yet another state. Here is a Zydrine chart, basically flat below 1000 ISK, 862 for the 863 for the sellers and 809 for the buyers. Historically speaking, a cheap price, I would say. I think Zydrine historically should have been above 1000 ISK, so this also lost a little bit of ground here. And then we've got the Megasite chart. Quickly talk about my views on these two. It's below 600 again as well. 595 for the sellers, 554 for the buyers. I think these are suffering a little bit from a lack of demand because it is so much harder to build the big stuff in nullsec that I think that this is what's happening here. And here the mechanic is not that there's like supply problems or anything like that. No, this is just straight up there is less demand because, well, it's that much harder to make titans, to make carriers, to make all of that stuff. And so especially Zydrine is now settling like a 20% below 1000 ISK, below what it was about a year ago, just because, well, there's less need, less demand for the nullsec minerals as well, and they have that direct line, which then probably translate to slightly higher supplies here, or a willingness to sell their Zydrine for an 800 ISK range rather than 1000 ISK, because, well, there's just not that much to do locally anymore with the Zydrine. So this is definitely, right, a little bit of a turnaround where minerals are under pressure because industry has become more complex, and the bigger you go, the more minerals you need, but also the harder it is and the more side activities you need to do. And so as a result, we are seeing that pressure again, with the exception of isogen and noxium, in my opinion, that are still at really incredible prices and have that upwards potential. So, you know, if CCP was looking to basically create three different segments in the mineral market, I do think that they have succeeded, and I think their vision for it is, yeah, start in high sec, relative safety, but, you know, you're definitely not getting that great returns. Then risk low sec if you want those better returns, and then eventually if you end up, you know, getting into a big group, getting into nullsec and things like that, then you've got that, you know, premium that you can get for your nullsec minerals like Zydrine and like Megasite. Although there you then depend on local activity, it's not necessarily that much more lucrative than trying to get some nice noxium supplies or things like that going. And then finally, we've got our oddball out, which is of course Morphite, tied to the Tech 2 economy, still extremely expensive. Went to a one-year high point about 10 days ago of, what was it, like 95k or something like that. Let's see what this is. Yeah, 95,000 ISK, crazy price. I don't think we've ever seen that. In fact, it is down to 80,000 ISK and 75,000 for the buyers, but this is still extremely expensive. You know, I clearly remember that my investments in Morphite, historically speaking, I've always bought it when it was below 10,000 ISK. So this is just crazy expensive at the moment. Next up, we've got the PI market coming in at 19 minutes. Like that. Let's take a look at this here. The broadcast nodes, excuse me. All right, kind of interesting, not what I expected, but a bit of a comeback in these. Made their way back above 175 million on the chart, 1.9 to almost 2 million for the sellers, 1.75 almost for the buyers. I'd say here a full recovery Could be due to a little bit of a lack of supply at the moment. Let's see if the Tranquility Trading, this one actually has a little bit of extra supply available, so it's not necessarily that. And it goes down to 1825 million here. But this is definitely a bit of a surprise trend break for me, with the broadcast nodes basically staging a very quick recovery after the pressure we saw about 2 weeks ago. Construction blocks, the exact opposite, tried to make a little bit of a comeback above 8,000 disc, couldn't defend that, and is back at the lowest range of 7,000 disc, 7.8 for the sellers, just below 7,000 disc for the buyers. And here we have, of course, the exact opposite picture. This is the supply in GTA 4.4. Here is the full demand, including the Tranquility Trading Tower. When you're lacking a little bit of supply, which apparently advanced planetary materials seem to now be able to have happen, I'm going to say more needs in industry and not really the ability to scale up that easily for these advanced PI materials is creating this opportunity. And then of course the easy to make stuff just is oversupplied and is still oversupplied quite massively. Then we've got consumer electronics confirming that trend, going below 6,250 on the chart, 6,200 for the sellers, 6,200 and then 100 for the buyers. Again, I mean, this is clearly so oversupplied that we are going to play with 1-year low points yet again. Coolants for fuels had a little bit of a better run here on the recovery, managed to get to like 20% from its normal price, but at the tail end we're starting to break down as well. 7,900 for the sellers, 7,200 for the buyers. My read on this, probably that lower activity at this point that is starting to show through here as well, taking away a little bit of demand, and that's really all it takes to break down on the price because of the situation that we find ourselves in. At the moment, we were basically still oversupplied, and we've been there for a couple of years at this point. Cryoprotectant solutions still just hugging that 100,000 ISK range, 100,000 a little bit above that for the sellers, just below 90,000 for the buyers. Same story when you're seeing these peaks here in July, October, things like that tied to implants. Well, that's your gamble, right? Perhaps. I mean, it's obvious now that Edencom stuff is still on the radar since they are rebalancing the Vorton projectors. Who knows if an implant set could be in the works as well, then this is of course your investment that you want to be ready with. Enriched uranium with fuels still able to maintain that premium. So coolants, I think, easy to produce, easy to oversupply. Enriched uranium a little bit harder to produce. So this one still has a little bit more inertia in it. 9.5 for the sellers, 9,000 disc for the buyers. But yeah, remember, right? Coolants 10,000 disc historically speaking. Enriched uranium 12,500 disc or something like that. This peak here is probably just its normal historical average price, showing that we have been in that oversupply situation, and we basically still are, if that historical price is your metric, right? We're never actually oversupplied. It's just that it results in lower prices when there's more supply than demand. That term oversupply is maybe not really right that I'm constantly using there, but I'm sure that you catch my meaning on that. Then we've got the integrity response drones. Unfortunately, a bad chart due to the data point here at 5 million ISK, so we'll have to look at the prices themselves. 1.8 million for the sellers and above 1.7 for the buyers. Really narrow margin, much better in the supply demand situation than the broadcast nodes, but also at a very reasonable, pretty good price. So advanced PI materials, a lot of these do seem to be doing all right. Mechanical parts, just like coolants, very easy to produce, and thus we pull back here as well. 7.3 for the sellers, 6,800 for the buyers, very cheap. Then we've got the nanites, so here up to 8,000 at the start of the chart, tied to implants again, breaking back down a little bit. We're talking 4.8 for the first sellers, 4.8 for a couple of buyers. This does look pretty interesting if again you want to be ready for an implant. I think it was part of the implants. Let's see. Generic structure. No. Ooh. Not. I thought they were, but interesting. Nanites, definitely for nanite repair base. So PVP situation could be, but I thought that there was still a link. And then a little bit of a gamble potentially on like some of this stuff coming out again. What's this used in? Well, I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but I thought that there was still a link between nanites and implant production. I'm just not entirely sure. I can't really find it right now. But yeah, very, very low. A couple of super aggressive sellers here. So, you know, if you want to try to grab nanites below 5,000 disc, I do think that you can do so right now. Then we've got the nano factories, you know, pretty decent, right back basically where we started the year at. 810,000 for the sellers, 806 for the buyers. Again, really narrow margin here between sellers and buyers for these advanced PI materials. Organic mortar applicators, 780 for the sellers, 730 for the buyers, quite decent as well. And recursive computing modules, another one with a bit bad data points, but yeah, 116 for the sellers, 1.1 for the buyers. Very, very narrow margins, showing that there is decently strong demand for advanced PI at the moment. And then I'm expecting more bad news here. Yeah, robotics just not able to do anything, flat at its lowest range of 60,000 disc, which in my opinion is around 40% below a historical average price for robotics of around 100k. 63,000 for the sellers, 57 for the buyers. Yeah, 60 is right in the middle there. So that's not too great. Self-harmonizing power cores lost a little bit, but coming from 2 million, that is again, relatively speaking, not that bad. We're still talking above 1.7 million for the sellers and 1.3 million for the buyers. First one where a bit of margin opens up between sellers and buyers. But I think that the interesting thing here is that then we're not seeing that much supply. I mean, we do see some new supply coming in, but if that hadn't happened, right, we would definitely be going up, which would eventually force these buyers to go into higher prices as well. So I think here self-harmonizing power cores, you know, if the market can switch to some other advanced PI materials, it can definitely, you know, force these buyers up into that more average range, which we've seen for most of these. Sterile conduits, another one that crashed down to less than 1 million, but makes a pretty fierce comeback. 1.2 million for the sellers and 1.16 million for the buyers here. So I'm reading this as exactly that same story, except here it just happened, right? A big pullback in the price, and then suppliers are like, no, we're not selling sterile conduits below 1 million ISK. Hold back for just a couple of weeks, and with the industry changes, there's now enough demand to get that volatility going and to force these buyers up, which then brings in new supply at what the market considers to be a more reasonable price, or at least the producers consider to be a more reasonable price. And so this mechanic, we haven't seen that in a very long time. The entire PI segment has been basically dominated by stuff like this, oversupplied, lower prices, because, you know, people just can't sell their PI into the market at that point. But for advanced PI materials, because of the higher needs in industry, we are starting to see a different dynamic show up here. Yukami superconductors tied to the implants as well. 72 for the sellers, 62 for the buyers. I mean, I would have loved to grab this below 50k, but that just never materialized. And then we get wetware mainframes also, you know, making its way back up a little bit. We're talking 1.7 for the sellers and 1.6 above that for the buyers. Again, very, very impressive. Not what I expected. I thought we would see that general, you know, depression because of the supply situation in PI, but it looks like advanced PI materials is starting to make its own type of moves. Next up, advanced moon materials, talking at 28.15. All right, let's take a look at all the carbides. First, here is crystalline carbonite for Galente. You know, a little bit of a pullback, but from a 1-year high point at 225, and we're staying above 200 disc. 207 for the sellers, 200 disc for the first buyer, and still 10 million units. Pretty aggressive, yeah, massive premium compared to a year ago. This is now very, very expensive at the moment. I think we'll see that for all of the carbides, but let's get that confirmed. Here is titanium carbide for Caldari. You know, also a little bit of a pullback again from 300 ISK, which is double the price we started off a year ago. 255 still for the sellers, 247 for the buyers. Look at that margin, super narrow. So this is now again that premium that just has to be paid. This is really starting to look like you know, this is the new normal. You're paying a lot more for these carbide materials. Ferrite carbide for Minmatar, basically a bit of a late bloomer, but about less than a month ago, 2-3 weeks ago, we shot up to 300 ISK, 1 year high point, so a bit of a pullback from that, but now again, 18 for the sellers to 13 for the buyers, really narrow margin, able to stay above 200 ISK. And then finally, tungsten carbide for MR production dips just below 200 ISK, but we're talking 205 for the sellers, 197 for the buyers. That is pretty much in line with the others, so all of these are coming together at prices above 200 ISK with Caldari, which is why I made the previous video. Caldari Take 2 ship production, it's in a pretty interesting spot that seems to be great for volatility, and probably this premium that we have on, oops, no, that's not the one I needed, this one that we have here, where it is 50 ISK more expensive on the carbide itself, is helping get that volatility and those optional premiums when you try to sell Caldari Take 2 ships there. So pretty interesting stuff, but all these carbides confirmed as being way more expensive than a year ago. Then we've got these metamaterials, so as always we'll start with photonic for Galente. Bit of pressure back below 12,000 ISK, and so here we get a little bit of a counter move, 11.7 for the sellers, 11.6 for the buyers, very narrow margin again, but definitely on this chart a below average price. Then we've got non-linear metamaterials for Caldari. What a difference, right? I'll quickly go back here. 12,000 ISK on the chart, and then non-linear for Caldari, we're talking 22,000 for the sellers and almost 22,000 for the buyers. So that's double the price of Galente, which again makes that Caldari ship production very interesting, and I think the volatility there is in part due to what's happening here. Then for the Minmatar plasmonic metamaterials, all right, very nice, super flat on the 1 year range here, right around 20,000 ISK at the moment, 19 for the sellers, 18 for the buyers. So that's the historical, I think, margin that we've seen on this one, and here we're basically a little bit below average, but really not by too much. And then for MR terahertz metamaterials, we actually have also basically a 1 year chart range that's where we've started at, and we're talking 19 for the sellers and almost 19 for the buyers as well. Much stronger demand here all of a sudden, but again, overall on this 1 year basically nothing happened, except that we had a period where it was pretty cheap, and then now we're back at normal prices for the metamaterials, and then that really shows a bit of a difference for Galente that are way cheaper than all of the others, with again Caldari costs being the highest of all of them. Then for the other advanced materials, let's take a look at these fermionic condensates, flat below average. So here we're really looking for either some sort of trend breaks, but at the moment we had a little bit of volatility that's basically settling down, and the pressure is back. We're back below 35k for ferrogel, for instance, so back below average. Then we've got fullerides that try to get back to 1000 ISK, doesn't succeed, has to pull back yet again, below 900 ISK for the seller. So pressure again below average. I mean, here on this chart it may not look below average, but if you remember the years before this, fullerides managed to stay above 1000 ISK pretty comfortably. So I would say that this again is not a great price. Hypersynaptic fibers, here is the spiky behavior all of a sudden, but supply finds its way, takes advantage of that very quickly, so none of these really remain more than just a couple of days, and we're back below 10,000 ISK. Yeah, 9.9 for the sellers and 9.9 for the buyers, but this again pushes back a little bit below average in my opinion. Nano transistors, that same pressure coming in from a below 5,000 ISK mark. Phenolic composites, there's then a couple of exceptions, right? Phenolic composites actually making its way up, and I think ceramic fibers as well. Here we have these, like the April announcement, a little bit of volatility. I think you need more of it in industry now, and so you're starting to pay that premium, with the price discovery being on the high side. 2,000 for the sellers, 1,800 for the buyers. Definitely a little bit of a premium compared to a year ago. And then ceramic fibers, same story here in February announcement. You will need more of this. So we jump up from above 300 to above 500 ISK. Now we'll lose a little bit, same pressure as in all the others, but still 466 for the sellers, 455 pretty much for the buyers. That is still a nice premium compared to a year ago. So it's not exactly the same picture on all of them. Not all of them are trading below average compared to their historical prices, but what we're definitely seeing is pressure in most of these at the moment with oversupply, which again I think is normal considering the seasonal dip that we are knowing, and then the lower activity in the war. I think players just are coming back into that advanced boom materials production cycles as well. A little bit more supply is currently putting pressure on the price. So I would not want to be, those that are still holding on, hoping for even higher prices. I think you'll be waiting for a long time at this point. Next up, the Tech 2 ships coming in at 35 minutes. Like that. And for this one, I'm going to open up some extra tabs. So here are my buy orders. As you may know from the videos, since the war is not ending at the moment, I've been doing a little bit of station trading, and so here are my attempts. I'm still trying to buy an Endurance, a Kitsune, and an Osprey Navy issue. More on that at the extra product. I managed to grab a Confessor for 35 million, and again, including taxes. I got a Manticore for 27, Prospect for 21, Zweppel for 41, still holding on to that one. Then that Loki, I think that trade happened, I'm not exactly sure, we'll take a look at that in a moment, but I did a Loki gamble, and then I sold my Basilisk, and I managed to sell my Hounds at a profit as well. But let's get started here on these Tech 2 ships. First of all, here is the Basilisk, and you can see that from my completed trades, we went down quite substantially. We never really managed to get below 200 million, but as I've said, right, Caldari production is the most expensive at the moment, so I did not expect that to happen. I made a move, managed to buy a Basilisk at 200 million including taxes, sold it at 230 including taxes again on the increased price, and we're still talking to 41 million for the sellers, 213 for the buyers. So here now, if you manage to buy at the bottom, you can still sell for a profit. Otherwise, of course, you have to wait and see. But this is that Caldari volatility that becomes very predictable. And yeah, someone actually mentioned that in the comments. Yeah, that's not right, because of taxes and everything. Yeah, this is after taxes. So that 30 million was the net profit of my Basilisk trade. Then we've got the Cerberus showing a similar pattern with that early June bottom going down to 230 million. The increase in price is a little bit less massive on the chart, but it's still 263 million for the sellers, 234 for the buyers. And you could say, why didn't you make this trade? Well, because I was not sure about the 230 bottom, right? Because here we did break that 230 at the start, and I was kind of thinking maybe we can go below that. That 200 million that was in play at first part of the chart here, definitely not going to be what was going to happen, but I thought maybe we could break 230 on the chart, and then you'd be looking at maybe like a 215 below 220 purchase for the Cerberus. That never materialized, and so this is something I've actually been talking about in the latest EVE talks when it comes to the Tech 2 ships. At the moment, what's really happening is I think that we have to try and find these price ranges where, this is where we get bottom prices, this is where you should try to buy in and then sell at a profit. And so it looks like the Cerberus may just be around 230 million on the chart, not below that, which we saw right here. Next up, we've got the Guardian, another one, a very similar pattern, right? Went down to well below 200 million in June. Was this the bottom range? Was it easy to know? I would say no, because we had a 180 before, and not even that long ago we were well below 200 million as well. So maybe that was, a little bit better and predictable than the Cerberus chart here, because we did break down at the same start, even below the price range that we started our little bull run here, you could say, and then that massive comeback. So this was tradable. I did not take advantage of that. 233 million now for the sellers, and buyers are still at 195. So that's just a straight margin opening up, but supply becoming oversupplied, and then supply drying up and it's going back up. And yeah, if you were keeping a close eye on this, we could have definitely taken advantage of that. Then we've got the Hound here, which I decided to sell. Same thing, except a little bit later. So we went below 25 million, currently selling for 32.6, buyers coming in at 20, still below 25 million as well. So it's that very same story. And so here is my Hound trade, bought for 20, just below 25 million, sold at 30 million, again after taxes. So this is a higher price than 30 million what I actually put in my sell order, and I did this trade with 4 of them. So yeah, it's another 20 million in net profit on the Hound trade, which I bought here. I could have sold here. I basically sold here, so it's still okay. I'm very happy with the result here. After that, we've got the Iquitursa, which is a Triglavian ship. We're keeping it here just to see, if we get anything substantial happening here. Could be an indication for PogVen, for trick content and things like that. At the moment, super expensive. 900 million for the sellers, 827 for the buyers. For a Tech 2 cruiser, a billion ISK, that's definitely expensive. Then we've got the Ishtar. Here, really that story, in my opinion. What's a bottom price for an Ishtar at this point? Very difficult to say. We're talking 233 for the sellers, 217 for the buyers. I would say that this is not the time that I would be jumping in, but 217 is already down here though. So maybe a purchase could be okay, but I would need to see the chart basically drop off a little bit more before I jump in on this one. Then the Manticore, very clearly, right, when I checked the market a couple of days ago, we are breaking down here on this one. Currently selling for 29.8, buyers are down to 22 million, so I bought mine very expensively, but I was careful, only bought a single Manticore at 27 million. Yeah, I actually remember yesterday I was thinking, maybe I should buy a second one. And try to get it for like 23 million after cost or something like that, because this is a pretty big breakdown. But yeah, I decided we're gonna try to stick to a single trade in any category, just look for something else then. But the Manticore is currently, in my opinion, very clearly in buy order territory, as we're again having this bubble right here, right, and a pull off at 25 million. You can pretty easily buy below 25 million at this point, and then just look at what happened in all of these others where we had this similar pattern. Very nice recovery, so I don't see any reason to not expect the Manticore after this to have a little bit of a bounce as well, where if you buy at the right time you can take advantage of that. Next up, we've got the Munin, that is 250. Considering this chart a little bit too expensive in my opinion. 253 for the sellers, 228 for the buyers. That's not something to jump in on. Then we've got the Nemesis. It's also going down, and this is really that same story. Again, is this the right time? Which is very difficult to actually say at the moment in Tech 2 ship markets. 26 million for the sellers, 22 below 23 million for the buyers. On this chart, it looks pretty good, but the Nemesis, I'm definitely a little bit more careful on this one because it's so consistently been able to get to that 20 million range. And so how many more? Well, we do need quite a few sellers to go through, but could we get below 22 million? On enough supply, maybe we can. At this point, I don't expect that to happen. But this is really, for me, what I'm looking at in the Tech 2 ship market. The Nemesis, does it mean that buying below 23 is the new good deal? Or is there room to go back, let's say, at least substantially below 22 million or something like that? And I'm not sure, so I'm trying to be very careful actually with my investment to, give good trades that have rather easy and predictable results, like here with the Basilisk and with the Hound. And the Nemesis, in my opinion, is not there just yet. Then we've got the Oneros, flat still above 200 million, so that's not a jumping point. 210 for the sellers, 187 for the buyers. All right, no, that's still, in my opinion, a little bit too early. But you can see that quite often the premiums that are being paid is because there's no supply, completely dominated by the sellers, and there's always a decently large margin in all of those ships for the buyers, and so it's not super easy. Then we've got the Panther announcement that the Black Ops are changing, and so man, CCP is making Tech 2 ships, Tech 2 battleships extremely expensive here at the moment. I am like twice as happy now with the Marauder gift from Zach. Thank you for that Golem Dream ship. incredible. It is ready in my base of operations for missions. Now under war deck I'm not going to fly it, but yeah, here is the Panther moonshot. So 125 million for a Panther, you know, last week, currently selling for 2 billion ISK, buyers forced up to 1.5 billion. This is the CCP announcement effect. Here is the volumes of all of the greedy traders that you know, hope that they were first, bought every Panther that they could up to a certain price point. This is of course going to distort my view of, is this like a general Tech 2 cost metric? Well, CCP is changing all of these Tech 2 battleships, and so as a result they're going up in price. Here's the Purifier starting its downtrend as well. We are below 30 million at this point, 29 for the sellers, 26 million for the buyers. And here it's probably the hardest chart to actually gauge with these bottoms, right? Close to 20, then 22, 23, but still clearly below 25. And then that doesn't work anymore. And now 30 million was even, you know, the start of an upward trend. So this one is very, very difficult to say that, all right, we are at well below 30, but is a 26 million range, you know, a jumping point for a Purifier? You know, I don't have all of the answers, and so we'll have to wait and see when it comes to the Tech 2 ship market trading, but I do think I'm showing that there are opportunities there. Then we've got the Scimitar flat at that 230 million, so we're expecting a big margin. Yeah, 232 for the sellers, 206 for the buyers. So this is, yeah, like not that easy to trade into. Then we've got the Widow, Black Ops. Here's again the volume spike, and I think people went for just 2 billion. You know, that's the new price that they're trying to sell at the moment. 1.7 billion for the buyers, super expensive. And then finally we get the Zealot. That's pulling back a little bit, but yeah, still 229 million for the sellers, 207 for the buyers. I'd still call that pretty damn expensive. So yeah, this is that Tech 2 ship market, definitely quite volatile, and there are opportunities there. You know, I took advantage of the Basilisk, I took advantage of the Hound. Could have pretty easily, you know, if I had paid a little bit more attention, that Guardian was super noticeable. Cerberus would have been doable as well, and here Manticore, I mean, I try, but I'm not sure if it is going to work. We'll take a look at the rest at the end of the video, but we still have the Tech 3 ship market to do next, which is coming in at 46.30, like that. Let's see here. As always, we will start with the destroyers, and this is not good news for my Zwepel holding, right? Holding the Zwepel at 41 million. I basically bought, I think, around here when I was hoping that the trend would be up towards 50 million, and we're actually towards 40 million on the Confessor. 43 for the sellers, 35 million for the buyers. And yeah, it's not even on a lot of supply. That is finally stalling, but you know, at a much lower price than a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So this is just, we were apparently slightly oversupplied. Hecate kind of confirming that trend, although still staying above 45 million, clearly pulling away from the 50 million when I would have hoped that we could hug that price range. 47 for the sellers, 43 for the buyers. A little bit more supply in this one. Well, that's what you would expect, right? Confessor, you won't be bringing Confessor at 43 when you can bring in Hecates at 47, which is going to be bad news, I think, for the upcoming weeks. Should see more pressure on the Hecate, even if the Confessor doesn't go back to 45. And then we've got the Jackdaw that is also, you know, showing signs of that pressure building. 48 still for the sellers, 45 for the buyers. But yeah, look at this last 24 hours. More than a front page, I'd say 1.5 to almost 2 pages of Jackdaws. They're sucking up all of that supply, and yet the Confessor still has room to breathe. So here for the Zwepel, we're still flat below 45 million, 45 for the sellers, 40 million for the buyers. You can very easily match my buy, but we're not looking at any profits at the moment for the Zwepel. And this was, you know, a mistake on my part. My read was, if you look at what was happening here before, that we could very easily play with 50 million. Here for the Hecate, it really felt like 50 million was sustainable for all of these others. And so I was kind of hoping that any disruption would push prices of at least one of them above 50 million, give even more breathing room to the others, and then also pull up this vehicle towards that 50 million range. That never materialized. We're now actually seeing a little bit more supply that is pushing prices down for the Confessor. It happened. Hey Kate is being pushed down now. Jackdaw is being pushed down now. And so it looks like, you know, we're not looking at profits on my Zweipel trade anytime soon. Then we've got the cruisers where it's gambling time, and so you can see that right here. I try to gamble. I will see why in a minute. Here's the Legion, definitely not a chart to gamble on. We're still above 180 quite consistently. 187 for the sellers, 168 for the buyers. Not exactly great chart, but here is the Loki chart, and that was clearly a breakdown back to a low point we hadn't seen in 6 months. So I managed to buy one for 161 million before taxes, and then I tried to put up a sell order that would net me 176 million ISK after taxes as well, and we're already back above 180 for a couple of days here. 187 million for the sellers, and let's see including the perimeter trading tower, yeah, 186 there, 165. So this one can actually be moved to my completed trades. Now this is of course not a 30 million 20 million profit, this is just like around 15 million ISK in profit, but yeah, this is a gamble, and this was also done in like 2 days. I think I bought right here, and then I managed to sell here. So this is just like, you know, if you're gambling, then I think that's what you gotta do. Keep very, very close attention to it. Look for the right moment on the chart. This one felt like it was absolutely perfect. At the moment, the Loki is back up to 165 million for the sellers, 187 for the buyers. Yeah, if you can buy for 161 without taxes, that means that everything that's new. So let's go here. I think all of these are after my buy order, and then yeah, that meant that I managed to jump in at exactly the right time for a quick low-key profit right there. Pretty happy with it, although as I've said, this is pure gambling. I don't have any reason to see why a low-key all of a sudden would be so much below the price of a Legion, and I did this with a single ship, and I would never do it with more. Next up, we've got the Proteus that's breaking down below 180 million ISK, 174 for the sellers, 160 for the buyers. All right, that's, yeah, no, not just yet. I mean, you could try, right, if you're looking at these two peaks, but for me, I'd need to see the chart touching 150, buyers below 150, before I would take a gamble on the Proteus. And then finally, we've got Tengu also landing quite nicely on 180. 180 for the sellers, 164 for the buyers. It's a large margin, don't get me wrong, but we've seen this in Tech 2 as well. It's going to be very difficult to actually buy something at 164, 165, even below 170, considering what's happening on the chart right here. And the difference for the Loki was we were in that downtrend, so it was possible here to buy from the buy orders, and that's really the big difference with all of the others. Proteus, Tengu, and the Legion at the moment easily defending that 180 range, completely dominated by these sellers, so you're not going to easily grab a Legion at 170 or below that price range, and so that's not the right time to jump in. But yeah, the cruiser market also showing there is opportunity in here. I got a small trade done for the Loki. Next up, we have the extra product, which is coming in at 52.20. We are going to take a look at the faction cruisers because I did notice, well, this here, and so I'm trying to grab a cheap Osprey Navy issue. The trigger for that one was actually a comment. Someone was mentioning that they were doing really well in Caldari faction warfare, so I decided to do a little bit of looking around at opportunities there. So it's cruisers, faction cruisers. Let's start with the pirate ones, get these out of the way. Not exactly tagged to faction warfare. Here's the Ishimu, very expensive at the moment. 1 year high point, 130 million plus for the sellers, 116 for the buyers. I think these are the industry changes right here, right? Noticing the steps up here in April and May. It's bound to be the industry changes. 50 million at the start of the year, almost triple the price. Then we've got the Cinnaball, starts at 130, currently costing 190, 91 for the sellers, 175 for the buyers. Extremely expensive as well. Ortras, 1 year high point. Out, that's a lot for a cruiser. 450 million for the sellers, pretty much. 406 for the buyers. Yeah, that's the industry changes right here. Phantasm going for 230 million ISK. Then we get the Stradios at 350. Then we get the Gila, 1 year high point as well at 350 million ISK. And then we get the Vigilant at 300 million. I gotta say that this is a very big step up, and I think that this will also have an impact on the Abyssal content, because stuff like the Gila, I think even Stradios, Phantasms have their place, Ortras as well, no doubt, have their place in the Abyss, cruiser, solo friendly, but yeah, you're paying a massive premium, of course, due to the industry changes for the pirate faction ships. And then let's take a look at the Navy faction ships. Here is the Stormbringer, another CCP effect, of course, big jump up in price and in volumes because they announced that they are getting a buff on the weapon system. 550 million for the sellers, 400 for the buyers. Pretty happy that I actually have one at this point. But Ogre Navy issue for Amar, quite a bit of volatility here, although not a sustained breakout. 63 million for the sellers, 53 million for the buyers. And then we come to Caldari, that is finally going back down in price substantially, although this one doesn't look like it's like a very clear buy price just yet. Below 100 million for the sellers, 85 million for the buyers. Not that unusual for a Caracal Navy issue, but clearly what we are seeing is cheaper prices, and so Caldari LP should be flowing at the moment if they're doing that well in faction warfare. Executor Navy issue for Galente in response is pretty expensive at the moment, going to its high range of almost 80 million for the sellers. And then we get the Omen Navy issue flat at 60. So Amar, not that much. Galente was definitely looking interesting. And this is where I tried to make a trade happen, as we did see the Osprey Navy issue basically break down to a price point that we only saw in November after a very big jump, but haven't managed to do so. So we're still talking 100 million here for the sellers and 70 million for the buyers. And I'm probably down here somewhere. I think this is mine. So you can see this. I think it could be interesting if I show that. I'm pretty sure this was mine. I thought I'd go decently aggressive, but still try to get a good price. 62,370 means that I was trying to buy the Osprey Navy issue for 63 million, just below that, including the taxes. But unfortunately, looks like I was not the only one looking at the market, as a little bit after that someone tried to buy 30 of them at 65 million ISK. So we need to have the Caldari overwhelmingly dominate even more in faction warfare, so that they can make a huge amount of Osprey Navy issues and crashes back down, fill up all of these buy orders, guys, so that I can still get my trade going. We'll see, that's probably not going to happen, but this also shows how quickly everything can move, because this is 88 days and 23 hours. So just in 24 hours, no, 2 days basically from my order, massive amounts of buying coming in here. In fact, went up to 70 million ISK here for the first buyer. And so this is a massive push up noticed by the market. And unfortunately, my order was not filled before this happened. But yeah, there's definitely opportunities here. And I do think if you keep an eye on faction warfare, or you're in the know for faction warfare, you've got a leg up on taking advantage of stuff like this. So this was the Osprey Navy issue. Next we've got the counter move. Here is the Scythe fleet issue. So it does really look like Caldari and Minmatar are the ones that have made the biggest moves. So Scythe fleet issue, very pronounced 1 year high point, 95 million to 100 million for the sellers, 76 for the buyers. This should mean very expensive Minmatar LP, an incredible opportunity, of course, if you still have those around, or you have some side fleet issues. Massive price. Stabber fleet issue, same thing. Look at that price increase. 133 million for the sellers, 86 million for the buyers. As yeah, about 6 months ago, could have bought these for 50 million. That is a very nice profit. And then for Galente, Vexor Navy issue, basically coming down from a 1 year high point, but nowhere near, I would say, a very clear buy order. But basically, this is the reason why I made this one the extra product for the week. A very noticeable comment there. We're kicking butt as Caldari, alright. Someone that really does love the Caldari faction when I made the video about the Take 2 Caldari ships. And the impact of faction warfare on these Navy faction cruisers does seem to be coming back. A lot of changes that focused it from more of the grindy PvE aspect in order to create LP to the PvP aspect. But here, I mean, this is a huge move, and it is apparently Minmatar against Caldari, where potentially us traders can take advantage of that. Unfortunately, as we're noticing as well, you gotta be really fast and on the ball if you actually want to make it happen, because it's quite competitive in this market as well. And then maybe just to end up here, we'll take a quick look at everything when it comes to my trades. So here is the endurance. I'm trying to buy an endurance for 19.5 million including taxes. Fortunately, again, some players coming in here to try and take advantage. The reason why, well, quite clearly we were hitting that 20 million on the chart again. Looked like a pretty interesting one to try and make a move on. Kitsune, same story. I mean, this is a breakdown to pretty much a 1-year low point, so I tried to take advantage of that. Unfortunately, some more players noticed that as well and made a move. And then, of course, the Osprey Navy issue, we just saw that. So these are 3 buy orders that so far haven't triggered. I think for the Osprey Navy issue, it's not gonna happen. Kitsune, Endurance, maybe on a little bit of supply I could still get lucky. We'll of course look at that later down the line. Then a Confessor for 35 million. Let's see where those are at. They're back above 35 million. So again, this is after taxes, and I managed to grab that one. So here it did start to feel, all right, this Vapel's not gonna work out, but the Confessor was, I think buyers were at like 33 million or something like that. So I did try to take advantage of this. Now 43 million for the sellers. I could take a tiny profit, but yeah, let's just hope that we do see maybe a couple of tactical destroyer fleets used in Nullsec for the end of the war, something like that. Blow those away, and then we could create an opportunity at this point, right? Confessor definitely in a better spot than this Vapel, not what you would expect, but that's the move that I made. Then I bought a Manticore for 27 million. Again, that downtrend was quite noticeable. Currently selling for 30 million, so definitely still losing money on that at the moment, I would say, or very close to breaking even. And you can buy well below my trade at this point. So I was basically a little bit early on that one. Then I managed to buy a Prospect for 21 million. Same thing. I mean, look at this chart. We're hitting 20 million. Was the time to put up a buy order, and you could probably still match that. 21 million after taxes, selling for 22. Obviously, we're now hoping for a turnaround. Still holding on to that Zvapel for 41. Currently selling for 45, so it's not like it's a terrible choice. And then the trades that I made quickly to end up here. Basilisk, 30 million profit on this bounce. Then we get the Hound, 20 million for 4 Hounds on this bounce, and then the Loki on basically a very noticeable bottom right here, 15 million in profits on that one. And I gotta say, this is pretty fun, a pretty fun way to play EVE Online. Not that I can do it like this all the time, but under this war deck, definitely interesting to, you know, dive a little bit deeper into all of that every single day this week so far, and trying to get those trades going. So that's going to be it for this EVE Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Good luck in the markets, and I'll see you all next time.